Okay, we're going to get right into it. I'm so excited about this episode, everyone. I've met her like so many times, and like this is the first conversation we're ever going to have. She's a TV host, political commentator, and author. Please welcome SE Cupp.
This is CNN Breaking News.
I just was like, I have to. Jesus Christ.
That's amazing.
It could have been worse. I could have went to Unfiltered and grabbed that music.
No, please don't.
Please don't.
That was awesome.
Well, look, this is so great that I have you on because I've always been a fan of yours. And like, I was like thinking, I'm like, well, why am I a fan? It's just one of those things when I watch CNN a lot over the years and so forth. I've always seen you on there. I just always like listening to you on there. And I just kind of was always like, I really like her. I don't know why I like her, but I just like her. It's like one of those things, right?
That's really nice. Thank you.
You know, of course. And then when I saw you at BravoCon in 2022, I was like, I don't give a shit. Like, fuck the housewives. I'm going over to her to get a photograph. And that was the first time when I wrote the cookbook with Amy Phillips.
Yes.
I was there with my stand, like selling the cookbooks and all that kind of stuff. And then I saw you again this year.
And I beelined for you.
Yes. You were like, hey. I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
And so then I was like, okay, like, then shortly after that, Hurrdat Media approached me and they're like, hey, do you want to do a podcast? I was like, yeah. And I was like, I wrote down a list of people. I was like, you definitely have to come on, like, first of all. And so I'm so happy you're here. So thank you so much. It really means a lot.
I'm so happy to be here. And I'm so glad you're doing this because you're really good at it. And like, we just need more of you.
Thank you.
We need more Stu. We need more Stu.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I always have a question, like when, like a lot of people ask me when, like, how did you become a chef? Like, did you like culinary school? Like how did you become a journalist? Like, what did you remember, like a specific age where like, oh my God, I love writing or I love doing this so much?
Yeah. So I always loved writing. And in fact, I mean, I was writing books at like 6 and 7.
Wow.
They weren't good, but I was writing them. And so I loved writing so much, in fact, and it was so natural to me. I thought this can't be my career. It's too easy. So I kind of like dismissed writing as a job. But I was always into the news. And one of my biggest memories of that is I'm maybe 10 or 11 and the Gulf War happens. And I'm on the living room floor with my parents watching it obsessively and just being amazed at how it's being covered by, you know, Bernie Shaw at CNN at the time, Wolf Blitzer. I mean, I remember viscerally.
So you just had this obsession with it.
Yeah, the news. And there were a number of moments like that where it wasn't the issue or the story, it was the coverage of it that I was obsessed with.
Yeah.
And so when I was young, like in high school, this new magazine came out called Brill's Content. And it was the first magazine about the news. It was about the media.
Okay.
And I have every issue. I got my first subscription to any magazine I paid for with my own money in high school was this magazine about the news. And so when I got to college and started working for the newspaper, it all crystallized. And yes, I'm going to write for a living. And yes, I'm going to be in the news. But it was always just like an interest. And for my younger life, I was a ballet dancer and I thought that's what I was going to do for my job. So it took a while to kind of figure out that this thing that I love and I am obsessed with should probably just be my job.
I always think like for some reason I just have like smart women around. Like my best friends are just like smart and they're like a lot of girls and they went like one of my best friends, she's like an English major at Berkeley, like incredible writer. She just like writes and it's just like so beautiful to see. I am so impressed with people that can write because it's like, I'm just so terrible at it. I mean, first of all, I'm from Ireland, like, so we can barely speak English, first of all. But I mean, it's like, thank God for ChatGPT. Like I'll write out stuff now and it is like for someone like me, it's such a great tool. Not for it like, hey, give me ideas and stuff like that. But like sometimes it can kind of help with that. But I can write out a paragraph of something. I'm like, hey, clean this up for me. Yeah. And it's like, it's really nice, you know?
Yeah.
But I think it's such a talent. So
well, I can't cook. And so I'm impressed with anyone that can cook. But I think this will make sense to you because I think this is the same. I'm a writer because I have to. I
Yeah.
have to write. I can't
To make
do
money.
a day to live.
Yeah.
It's breathing for me, and it might be
Yeah.
the same with you and
Yeah.
food, I don't know, but, like, I meet a lot of creative
No, I
people
have
who
to. Yeah.
yeah, who are the same thing, like, I have to do it, it's all I think about. I don't feel normal until I've done this. So,
Like, what is
you know,
like
I'm
the more
I'm good at it. It's I have to.
yeah, yeah. So like what like you know, you work at CNN and you go on like you go on like loads multiple different shows on there, right? Like
Yeah,
you pop on and off and stuff.
yeah.
And so when you wake up in the morning, did you have like an inbox of just like here's the stories of the day? Or like or do you go research yourself or like how does that work?
Yeah, so I'm booked for appearances in a number of ways.
Yeah,
A bunch of the shows book me in advance, so we don't know what we're gonna be
got it.
talking about that day, but
Sure.
you're gonna come on. And then I'll wake up in the morning and there'll be requests. Can you come on today at this time to talk
Great.
about this specific story?
Got
Um,
it.
but it's my job to know what I have to know every day. And
Yes.
so I wake
Okay.
up, I turn on CNN, I get a lot of news that way.
From
It
that. Yeah.
mostly what CNN's gonna be talking about that day, because that's how I'll know what I'll be talking
Sure.
about that day. But
Yeah.
I have other interests as well. I read a lot about foreign policy.
Mhm.
I work in child hunger space. I'm an ambassador for No Kid Hungry. I read a lot about hunger. I read a lot about some advocacy issues that are important to me.
Okay.
So I
Bunch of
read
stuff.
for my job, and then I
Yeah.
read up for my, my personal interest.
Your personal stuff. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I always was just kind of interested in that and like how it works. So, and
But
that's why I
Stu,
was
the
like
thing is,
asking
like,
you.
I get
I
this
want to
question a
tour
lot. Like,
CNN when I come to New York.
I will give you a tour. But I get this question a lot. Like, how do you keep up with everything? I
Yeah,
mean, it's not like these are brand new stories every day. It's
sure.
a continuing story. So,
Yeah,
if you've been paying attention as I have, I've been in this business for about 20 years, you get an institutional knowledge that just
yeah,
builds.
yeah, yeah.
And then you're just
Okay,
tacking things on, little things
sure.
every day that are adding to the story. It's not I'm reading a story for the first time every day. That's
Got you.
really not
Got you. It's just like it's
usually
you're
how it
building
goes.
upon it every day. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I asked you yesterday, I was like, hey, like I'll always write out topics for whatever guest I have on. I was like, hey, do you have any things that you want to talk about? Like it's always interesting to ask the guest, like, hey, is there anything you want to get off your chest? Or so SE sent me a few things back. So we're just going to get into it right now. Squatting.
Dude, dude,
It's
I'm obsessed with this because, my blood boils when I read these stories.
it's I Googled it after I was on the flight on the way back from New York and I was like, okay, I need to look into this. And of course, like I just type in squatting. New York Post brings me up one recent article about like this couple, $900,000 property, an investment property. So like, here's the thing. Can this happen two ways? Like, okay, so I can pretend to go into a place. I'm like, hey, pay my rent for 3 months. And then I'm like, I'm done and I'm not fucking leaving. That's one
Yes.
way.
Yes.
Or you break into an empty
Yes.
property.
This is so
Okay.
wild, and now that I've brought up squatters, you're gonna see these stories everywhere because they're everywhere now. It's like a boomlet. This is so wild. I would be in jail. If this happened to me, I'd be in jail because there's like 3 indignities that happen here. Imagine you
Yeah,
go away, right? You come
sure.
home and some guy's in your house.
Could you
And the
imagine?
guy does not run scared when you've caught him. He's like, "I'm staying." And you're like, "What?" "What?" And the guy's like, "Yeah, I live here now."
It's just like full on like gaslighting. You're like, no, no, I live here. It's like, what
Absolutely,
are you
like,
talking
to
about? You're
drive you
like,
crazy. Then you're like, "Well, I'm gonna call the police." And the police are like,
yes,
you can't leave, you can't remove him. You
that's
can't change the
just
locks."
crazy to me.
Like,
Like,
what? Wait, this guy broke into my house and lives here now, and I have to, like, live with him or give him my house? It's insane. I'd be in jail. There's no way.
yeah,
I'm not going through
I
the legal system. It's crazy.
I've heard like a story from years ago. A friend of mine's like dad owned a bunch of properties, and this happened. And he just like hired these people to go in and just, I think, kind of like threaten them and
Yes.
got them out and
I
paid
might
like the
need his
5 or 10
number.
grand. Yeah, or something like that. I mean, if someone came with like a crowbar to your door, you're fucking leaving. Like,
Yeah.
like I'm out. You know what I mean?
Gone, gone,
You
gone,
kind of have
gone.
to just take it into your own hands. I understand, like, like, not to resort to violence, but you kind of need to threaten them to get them out.
I could
Like, what are you
not
going to do?
even imagine. I could not imagine. I don't understand how all of these homeowners are not in prison, because the patience you must have to
Yeah.
try to just go through a legal channel that can take months while some asshole's living in your house. I just can't even imagine.
And so, do they ever leave where you're like waiting outside and you run in, change the locks, and then they can't come back in? Like,
You can't
can you
change
do
the
that?
locks. It is illegal.
No.
Yes, in these squatters' rights states, and cities, you will be criminally prosecuted for changing your own locks. You can't
Of a
trick
property
them.
you own.
Yeah, it's wild, and all of these laws
Okay.
need to be revisited.
You can probably answer this for me because I don't know. The term squatters, like, why did it originally come about? Like, what, like, why is there protection for, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it
Like,
came
what's
about
the
because
reason?
in places like New York City, where um tenements and landlords were, landlords were traditionally, for a long time, historically, not nice and not fair
Mm,
and not decent. And
got it.
these laws came about to protect renters, against punitive
Yeah.
landlords and fraudulent crook landlords,
Yeah.
because it was not a well-regulated business in the
Or would they just
beginning.
like double the rent or whatever, like, stupid
Yeah,
things
in
like
in a
that?
second,
Okay.
or kick you out in a second. So that's how they came about, but we don't live in that world anymore.
Mm.
Landlords have to follow rules and regulations. These laws protecting squatters versus homeowners, they're insane.
Jesus. I mean, that's like, I'm going to look more into it because it is really interesting. And the stories are just gut wrenching as well, though. You're just kind of like,
Yes.
and
Yes.
sometimes it can be years till they get them out. It's just,
Years. I
it's
can't
just
I can't. I
I'm
I've
so
I've
upset now.
I know, it makes my blood boil, and I pitched a show called Squatters that was
Yeah.
just gonna be these stories over and over again, because there's so many of them.
And just you going out into the field, just interviewing
Yeah,
people and
yeah,
like all
and,
that
like,
kind of stuff.
busting
That's a
down
really good.
doors.
Yeah. Oh, that would actually be amazing. You also said like restaurants are your hobby. I just got back from New York. I went to Cossack Cipriani, which was amazing. That was like so
Yes,
beautiful
yes,
because my friend was a member there.
yeah.
We went around the West Village. Where else did we go? We went to this crazy restaurant. It's called Lily's and it's like themed. There was like
What's the theme?
bears and stuff like that, like polar bears. It was like a winter wonderland. It was like kind of like an Irish Victoria. My friend was like, "Hey, let's just go here. It's easy." On like Sunday night before I left on Monday, and I was like, "Oh," I said, "This is just so bizarre." It was like chicken wings and stuff like that. I went to Pastis, which was like amazing as
Love
always.
besties, yeah.
That's my favorite. What? Give me one or two of your favorite places. I mean, I guess for anybody listening, if you go to New York, here you go.
Ooh,
It's always I
so
hate that
many. When
question.
I say, like, my husband likes to hunt and fish, and
Yeah,
I do too.
I saw
But
you did that this weekend.
yeah, I do a lot of that too, but if you ask what my hobby is, it's going to dinner. It's going to
Yeah,
restaurants. It's
it
what
is
I
fun.
love the most. When I turned 40, um, my husband was like, "What should we do?" And I said, Let I just wanna go out to eat somewhere
Yeah.
great." And he said, "Well, let's look at what's the best restaurant in the world right now?"
Mm,
And it was, in Italy, uh, um, Osteria Francescana in Modena,
okay.
Italy was
Yeah.
it at the time. And I said, "Okay, let's go there, great." But then he said, "Well, numbers 2 and 3 are in Spain and France. Why not do all 3?" And so
Oh my
we
god.
did this driving tour from Spain through France to Italy to do the top 3 restaurants in the world.
Yeah.
It was the trip of a lifetime, but, like, that's all
That
I
is the
wanna
trip
do
of a
is go
lifetime.
out to dinner.
That's a really like your husband's awesome for like thinking of that. That's amazing. And
Isn't
like,
that
yeah,
great?
what a great trip.
It was great. I mean, it was a lot because, these restaurants, you know how they are. It's like 20 courses, 4 hours, wine
Uh-huh.
pairings,
Yes.
and so it's a lot. We did it over 7 days with a day
Great.
in between
Okay.
each big night, but, like, it was a lot. In New York, honestly, my favorite restaurant in New York is probably Katsuya. Um,
Okay.
it's just I don't know
Just
if it's basic. It's
it
not,
and a lot it's
I
not but I
love
think it's like
Katsuya.
always like a vibe. Do you know what I mean? There's a vibe.
It's
I
a
went to
vibe, and the
Chiconi's
food's
as
so
well there.
it's so good. The food is so good, but
Yeah,
I also
it
love
is.
Morandi is one of my favorite
Okay.
Italian restaurants, Pastis, Balthazar. I love,
Yeah.
little French bistro, places. I've got a lot because I lived in New York for 15 years, and I
Do
work there.
you Do you think the French onion soup is better at Balthazar or pastis?
Woo! This is a controversy. I would say Balthazar because it's mostly about the ambiance there. I want
Yeah.
to tuck
Okay.
into a hot bowl of soup at Balthazar. At Pastis, I want something a little lighter, maybe some escargot, maybe a
Yes.
niçoise salad. It's an ambiance thing for me.
Okay. I need to have it at Balthazar. I haven't had it yet. But every time I go to pastis, I get the French onion soup. I think it's like
It's
one
so
of the
good.
best I've ever had. It
It's so
is.
good. What's your favorite restaurant ever? Period.
Do you know what it is? It's really funny. When I first moved to America, I lived up in Napa Valley.
Is it French
And
Laundry?
no,
Okay,
I
okay,
did
good.
go,
Okay.
but it wasn't my favorite. I mean, it was great. It was an amazing experience, but like, more like kind of like on a daily basis, or you can go anytime, like that kind
Yes.
of idea. Um, I really love Bouchon up there in Yountville.
Okay.
It's like we would go all the time. Like I would work at Meadowood, and then we would go there, and like every evening at like 5 o'clock, we'd sit at the bar. We'd get like oysters. I would get like probably a croque madame or something, and it just like brought me so much happiness. That
I
restaurant
love
does.
that.
I
Yeah.
just love it so much. So that's like the memory. Or Cindy's Backstreet Kitchen that was in St. Helena. That was another place. It's not there anymore, but
Oh.
the best pineapple upside down cake I've ever had in my life.
Oh my God. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I
Yeah.
love that.
Do you know when these like memories just stick in your head? And
Yeah.
Ben and Jen, you sent me that text and I was like, what's going on with Ben and Jen? You have to.
Stu.
Well, I know everybody hates her on TikTok, so that's
I
one
cannot.
thing.
Well, I don't hate her, but I cannot with her right now. And I was not here for like Ben and Jen 2.0. I've been through
Yeah.
it. We've been through it.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can't
Yeah.
do
Yeah.
this
True.
again. I can't invest again in this couple. But like, so I was a little ticked to begin with. But
Yeah.
then this obsession, she's foisting her relationship story on the rest of us. We all have to go through her wild, I think very unpleasant journey to love. Why? I
Yeah.
don't want to be on
Did
this
you
ride.
did you watch the documentary?
I've watched enough on TikTok to know I don't want to watch this documentary.
Here's the thing. The documentary is actually good, and I enjoyed it, and she
You're a
comes
liar.
across
You're a
no,
liar.
I swear to God. She comes across kind of like, "Okay, I kinda get it," like, whatever, but yes, I've heard the stories and so forth, and I've had a friend that worked with her on a show, and but the movie was just terrible then. But yes, she's forcing the love stuff on us and the story, and it's like, I get it. I do get what you're saying.
It's too much. It's too, you're asking too much of us. You are asking too much of us.
But what but but I do think it's like unbelievable that what was it 20 years later they got back together? Was it 20?
It's probably around, yeah,
Yeah.
it's probably
I think
around
that's
20. Yeah.
I mean,
And I'm
yeah,
exhausted. I'm
yeah.
exhausted.
20 years later. So get into a bit of Bravo. You always go and watch what happens live. How did that even come about, the watch what happens live thing? I've done it a couple of times, the bartender thing, and it's super fun doing it.
I've seen you. Yeah,
Um,
yeah, and you're great. Well, I'm a Bravo super fan and I have
yeah,
been from the beginning. Like one of the first
got it.
shows was called Welcome to the Parker about this
Oh,
hotel in Palm
yes,
Springs, like
Palm Springs.
early shit. Yeah. And I was a big, big fan. And it was at a time when Bravo and reality television was sort of a guilty pleasure. Like you didn't admit
Yeah,
that you loved it, but I was out admitting it. Like I'm
for
out on
sure. Oh,
CNN
wow,
talking
really?
about
Yeah.
Bravo. Right, right.
Because it was so lowbrow. You're like, when I watched the show, you're like, you watch that garbage? I was like,
Yes,
oh, yeah,
100%. It's
yeah,
not a guilty
yeah.
pleasure anymore. It's completely legitimate and mainstream. And in fact, I have a friend who works at Bravo in research, and he's told me a million times that the Bravo audience is very affluent, very educated.
Yes.
And there's a crossover between CNN and Bravo. Like people who watch Bravo watch CNN
Really?
and vice versa. So I locked into Bravo early and often, and I talked about it
Yeah.
so much that like Andy was like, "Well, you got to come on."
Come on.
And so I just started doing that, and then I go to BravoCon and I do the panels,
Yeah,
and I
yes, you do the
interview
panels, exactly.
Bravo people.
Um,
Yeah, I just love that world.
I have to ask you about this because it has come up. Vanderpump Rules, right? I only started the whole show when the little Scandal thing. That's the first season I watched, right? I didn't watch it
Okay.
before then. There's just too much. I just can't keep up with all of them.
Yep.
So Ariana and like it kind of bugs me, right? I get you're like, be careful. You're like, I get like the bad thing happened to her. I understand that. And all these opportunities that are coming her way. And like Sheena like was kind of obviously jealous about the Dancing with the Stars thing, which I think she just got. But didn't she just get I think she just got cast for it.
Sheena
I
did?
read I think she did. Yeah, I just read it somewhere the other day. I could be totally wrong. But
Oh,
like,
I'm so happy for her if that's true.
do you think people are kind of like pissy about her getting all these opportunities when you actually have people that like have not saying she's not talented, but like real talented or chasing their dreams, and then she just kind of like, oh, she got cheated on. She gets all these deals. And
Yeah.
Chicago. My brother
I
saw
think
her the other night in New York.
yes, I think there's some jealousy.
Yeah.
But I think it's also just that like I think there's some fatigue too.
Mhm.
Like
I think
we
that's
get it.
it.
You were cheated on. It was awful. It was a terrible thing that happened to you and you deserve all the money and the fame and the attention.
Sure.
You deserve it all. But can we go on with our lives now or
Yes.
are we stuck in Scandival forever? I think there's a little of
Yeah.
that going on too.
Because it's like at the end of like this stuff happens every day in everyday life in people's lives.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it does. It's bad, but it happens.
Yeah.
And they don't get rewarded. But like, I
No.
mean, I think I'm a bit jaded. I'm like, oh God, another deal, another thing. Like now she's at like Carl's Jr. or she's at another like Chipper or like a burger place. I'm like, I can't. It's
She's
like
like
enough.
the Kevin Hart of Bravo. She's just getting like all of the jobs now. All of them. They're all going to Ariana.
Seriously, no, you're right.
Yeah.
Are you liking the season so far?
It's an odd season because we're
Yeah.
still dealing with the collateral damage of Scandival. And that's interesting to watch. I mean, we were all interested to see how they were going to deal with each other, but there's
Uh-huh.
kind of like nothing else happening. And so I'm hoping the rest of the season gets into some other stuff. You know,
Uh-huh.
I can't live in Scandival forever either.
No, it has to move on. And I just feel like he has suffered so like he has suffered, she's suffered, Rachel has suffered. Like
Yeah.
I just feel like, can we just find a way of just like being amicable again and just like let's move on? And you know what I mean? It's like we get
Yes.
it. Like he's
Completely.
paid his
Completely.
price. Like he has paid. Um, this is a funny conversation. I don't know if it's funny. So my friend, this was like last week. She went in for like biopsies and she came home and she was like, let me tell you the story. It's about doctor's bedside manner.
Okay.
And I
So
don't know if
she's
you have a
okay.
she's fine. Yeah, well, we're waiting for the results, but she'll be fine. We think it'll be okay.
Okay.
I'll keep you posted.
You're like, I have a
But
funny story. My friend is in the hospital to get a biopsy. Like, what?
I'm so sorry. So like she had to get like needles in her neck and stuff like that, like whatever, right? So the doctor is like, "Oh, where do you live?" Or or where were you? Or where's your primary doctor? And she was like, "Oh, it's Palm Springs," because she lived out there during the pandemic with her parents in the house, so all her doctor's visits were out there. So she's like, yeah, she's like, what's with Palm Springs? Like, how do you like live it out there? Isn't it kind of gross? Like, she just was hating on Palm Springs. And I was like, why didn't you say anything to her? Like, why didn't you correct her? She's like, yeah, because she had fucking needles in her hand and she was going to stick them in my neck. That's why. I was
Yeah.
like, but she was just like she just was very like, oh yeah, that looks pretty bad. I don't know. We'll probably have to get a biopsy in that. Like, just super negative.
Ugh.
Like, have you ever experienced any kind of like weird doctors? I just got a hair transplant. My doctor was like insane, super nice. Like I wanted to be his best friend.
Yeah. That's what
It's
you want.
important. Yeah,
I have had that. I had a doctor deliver some not pleasant news. It wasn't
sure.
life-changing, but it was not pleasant.
Yeah,
And the way she did it was so matter of fact and
yeah.
emotionless
Mm,
that I just thought, my God, imagine if it had been really bad. Like, how would you deliver
mm.
really bad news? No, it's off-putting. And I feel like everyone is nervous to go to the doctor anyway. Like, we're
Anyway,
already
yeah,
nervous about what's gonna happen, what you're gonna tell me, what you're gonna find. The least you can do is be sensitive about that.
yeah, exactly. I mean, God. Do you know that then like you can leave reviews online for those doctors?
No?
Yeah, it's a whole thing. She was telling me, she was like, no, you can go on there, you can see the reviews of all these doctors. So something you
Like
should
Yelp
know.
for doctors.
Yes, I don't know what the website is. It's probably some MD website, but yes, you can
Whoa.
actually Like, she was like, "They need to teach a course on bedside manner in
Oof.
medical school."
Oof.
I get it.
You know,
Yeah.
it's such a, clinical profession, you know?
Mm,
I'm sure not everyone who goes into it has the emotional touch because it's such a
mhm.
science, right? And probably
Yeah,
attracts people that are more clinical than emotional, but yeah, that's why when you find a good doctor, like, never leave. Never leave.
yeah. No, no. Yeah, you're right. Something that I've just kinda discovered about myself recently is that, I've really kind of fallen down the rabbit hole on TikTok of all these tarot readers. Do you ever do that? There's some really, really good ones out there,
Okay,
and
so
somebody.
A, you
Go
believe
ahead.
this, right? You believe in
I love all that stuff.
yes.
I do believe in it.
Yep.
Spirituality, manifestation, all that kind of stuff. I do Kabbalah, like, I'm all in.
Okay.
Um, there's like I like I go on, I'm like, "Oh my god, she's really good." I'm like, "Hey, can I get a private read?" Like, literally last week, I think I had 3 private reads. I spent like $300.
You're addicted. You're an addict.
It's kind of like a bit of an addiction now. You're like, "Well, what's she gonna say next one?" But there have been some on there where it was scary. Like, it was a private read, even though it was a read for everybody,
Yeah.
but she hit on every single thing going on in my life. It was and then I was like, I booked her name's Danielle Ingenta was her name. If anybody on TikTok, if you want to go see her, like she's amazing and they're quick and like whatever. Um, I got a private read with her, and
Mhm.
she literally said, she was like, she's like, "You're gonna do something and you're gonna meet a guy." And I'm like, "Okay." She's like,
Mhm.
"No, it's like," and it's kind of like it's communication, it's talking. She's like, "Are you doing a podcast?" And I was like, Yeah, yes." I was like, we just started talking about like the contract and how it was going to go, and so I was like, "Yeah." She's like, "But there's another guy, and there's another guy like, and it's like almost like he has a podcast or something like that." Last night I went on a date, and he has a podcast with another guy, and it's like a
Did you
pretty big
know that when
podcast.
you went out with him?
I did, but I'm only actually thinking of it now because when I did that tarot read, this was before I started this podcast. So that must have been 2 months ago at least, 2.5 months ago. I don't know, but it was like a 9 out of 10, the date was. It was a really good date last night. So we'll
Yay!
see. So we'll
Oh
see. I
my
don't know, but
god.
she said that and she was really good.
Yeah.
So I went back for 2 more reads, like, and so
Yes, you
I
did.
did one
Yes, you
last
did.
week. I went down last week because she was good, and then she like said more things, and like she was great. So
So
you
let
can
me
find
ask you
really good
this,
people on
like,
there.
is the excitement for you, "Oh my god, she knows so much about me," or are you going to learn stuff about future, like, to help you make decisions?
I think, do you know what it is? I think when you go and see these people, I don't go for answers. I
Mm,
just go for like maybe just a tiny bit of guidance. Just be like,
mm,
okay, just be aware of that. Just be a bit aware of that. You
yeah,
know what I mean? It's
yeah,
just that's all. You know what I mean? Because you have to take it with a grain of salt. You can't
yeah,
live your life. Well, she said this, so this must be happening.
right,
Like even this guy last night, I went on a date with, and it was a great date. Um, like if it doesn't work out, it's fine. Like I'm not
right.
gonna be like, well, she said this. You know, it's like
Yeah,
no,
yeah,
and you can't control it. You go on the date, you let it go. We'll see what happens,
I
and that's it.
like
You just
that.
gotta release it. Yeah, you have to.
When I was in 6th grade and I was about to move, and one of my best friends wanted to have one last, like, um, you know, hangout,
Yeah.
and our moms, got us, like, a lunch at this hotel, like, this fancy
Mm,
hotel, and then had a palm reader come as,
okay.
like, this our final, like, play date or whatever. And the palm reader goes through all these things about me that sound very true. Like you work with your feet. I was a ballet dancer at the time.
Yeah.
You love the ocean. I was born at the ocean. I'm a Pisces also. Lots of things that made so much sense. I wrote them all down on the back of a bank receipt and I put it in my wallet and I had it for the next like 30 years.
Yeah.
But one thing she said, "It's gonna be hard for you to conceive when you're older. You're gonna have reproductive challenges." And
Wow.
I thought about that so much growing up and being a young woman and
Yeah.
then, getting married, I was so worried about that because I believed this reading.
Sure.
And, I had no trouble conceiving. None.
Great.
None
Okay.
whatsoever. In fact, when we got married, my husband and I, John and I got married, and I said, "It's gonna be hard for me to have a baby, so we should start right away." I mean, a month later, I was pregnant. So,
Sure,
I mean,
great.
it was so, I have a bit of a bad taste because and this is on me, not her.
Mm,
I held on to that because I was a young and
yeah,
impressionable kid. And it
sure.
really it worried me. For
Yeah.
years, I was
I can
worried
understand that.
about
Yeah.
this thing that ended up not being a problem. So, I don't know,
Uh-huh.
maybe I need to revisit the space, as a mature adult and take it for what it is.
Sure.
Like you
Yeah.
say, you take it with a grain of salt, you're just aware of
Like,
something, and then you move on.
exactly. And it's because look, like I've gone to other ones and stuff, and they've said stuff where it's like none of it's happened. You know what I mean? So it's
Yeah,
like
yeah,
fine. You know what I mean?
yeah,
So I think just go for fun. Kind of keep it in the back of your mind. If something happens, you're like, oh my God, how cool. Like she said that was going to happen. And just kind of
yeah,
have fun with it like that.
I get that. Okay, when
Um,
I come out to LA, we're gonna go together.
yes.
You're gonna
Yes.
take me.
Please, please, please.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm gonna do you. I don't read. I don't do tarot reading.
No, but we're gonna go
But
together. You're gonna take me to
yes,
your guy, your person, your lady.
perfect. Um, we're not gonna play a game, but I do wanna know how this came about. You won Jeopardy?
I
Like a
did.
celebrity version of it?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, you have to say that. It's not real Jeopardy. It's the celebrity version of Jeopardy.
It's still hard. Like, it's not easy. I mean, here's the thing, like, I watch Jeopardy sometimes, terrible, and I'm like, I know the answer, I'm like, "Ah,
Mhm.
what is" like, I just get stuck on I'm like, "Why can they not just say the answer? Why does it have to be in the form of a question?"
I know, I know.
Is it just always been like that, and that's just the game and just shut up,
It's
Stuart?
always
Like
been like that, but it's rude. It's rude. Like, can't you just know the answer?
yeah, like, 'cause sometimes you can kinda stumble on that to try and get out as fast as possible
Yes.
instead of just blurting out the answer. But,
Yes. I Jeopardy was the most nervous I've ever been for anything. I don't get nervous doing TV at all, but,
yeah,
this is like a big stage where you could really, like, do a number on your own reputation. You could really mess up and
if you
fall
don't
on
know
your
basic
face.
stuff or whatever it was, if you yeah,
And I
like
have
that kind of
friends and
way?
colleagues in my business who have done it, and it did not go well, and, like, that lives forever on the internet. So, I was very worried that not that I didn't really even care about winning. I mean, I wanted to win for
Yeah,
my charity, again, No Kid Hungry, but I just didn't wanna embarrass myself, and
yeah,
the fact that I got through it unscathed and won was really
amazing.
nice, but
That's really cool.
I have, I have a great story from Jeopardy! I was on with, Chuck Todd, who's on
Yes,
MSNBC, he's another
yes,
Politico, real
yeah,
smart and a friend, and Jonathan Franzen, who is, a novelist, very smart. And I'm going into the green room, and there's Chuck, hi Chuck, and Alex Trebek is there, and Jonathan Franzen is there, and
yeah.
Jonathan comes up to me and goes, "Are you hair and makeup?"
Shut up.
Uh-huh, and Alex says, "No, no, no, that's SE Cupp, she's your competitor."
So
And
rude. Oh
I
my god.
just could not this was not in the 1950s, by the way, this was just a few years
Yes,
ago. Yeah, I could not believe that a man of this era of today, could come up with the words to say to any woman, "Are you hair and makeup?" Like, off the bat, like, "You must be hair and makeup." It was
yeah.
wild to me, and all the more sweeter when I beat him.
Yes. I mean, that would just give me like, oh my God, anxiety. I'm like, wait, should I not be here then? Like, you know what I mean? It could make you like spin. Not you, obviously,
It
but
could,
like,
it could. I don't
yeah,
think he wasn't trying to be mean. He just
yeah,
assumed
yeah,
I'm hair
yeah,
and makeup because I'm a youngish woman who doesn't
yeah,
look like an intellectual. Mind you, I've
yeah,
got
yeah, yeah.
several degrees, including a master's, and I've written books, but he didn't know, didn't care, and just assumed I'm here to do his hair and makeup.
Jesus. All right. Before we go, last thing I want to ask you the TikTok ban. What's happening with it now? Does it go to the Senate? And what do you think is going to happen? Like, honestly,
I'm not sure where it is in Congress at the
I do.
moment.
Yeah.
But my husband and I argue about this. He thinks it's going to be banned. I don't think it's going to be banned.
Really?
I don't, and I hope it's not.
Yeah.
I love TikTok. It's a super
Yeah,
creative
yeah, yeah.
place, and I think it's really good for a
Me
lot of
too. I like it.
communities, and, I think there's just this I mean, there's the fear of China that's just part of all of this,
All of it. Yeah.
and a simple answer would be for TikTok to divest from China, but someone would have to buy it to do that, and I'm
I
sure
don't
it's
think they'll have a
expensive.
problem selling that because
Whew,
it's
difficult.
would they? A lot of money. Yeah, they
Difficult,
would.
tricky,
Difficult.
complicated.
Oh,
So, I don't know where it's
okay.
gonna go, but I'm not all that worried that it's gonna be banned.
Oh, all right. Um,
Some optimism.
do you have any? Okay, I have a little gadget. This could actually be fun for you. I always like before we wrap it up. I always kind of give a food tip or a gadget or what I like right now or whatnot.
Give me.
I don't know if I said it last week. I can't remember, but what I've seen on TikTok, we're talking about it. There's a girl, and I make chicken paillard probably once a week for my clients, right? It's
Okay.
something they love, but one complaint that she always has, and now in a really nice way, she's not like a bitch or anything. She's like, "Oh, I just wish it could be thinner and stuff like that." I'm like, I'm going to put holes through the chicken breast if I get it any thinner. But if you use a tortilla press between two pieces of plastic, put the chicken breast, but like you have the chicken breast first, two pieces of plastic with a tortilla press, it flattens it so thin.
Oh my gosh, what a
It
good
is a
idea!
great gadget.
Because when you're tenderizing, when I'm, like, pounding my chicken
Yeah.
for, like, a Milanese or something, it's so uneven because
It
the
drives me
chicken's
crazy.
uneven. That's
Yes.
such a good idea.
Yeah. So I bought it. It works. Be a bit patient with it. Like it's a bit of trial and error, but it does work.
I'm writing this
I'll
down.
post the link of the one I bought, like on the details of the podcast afterwards.
That's such a good
SE,
idea.
before we go, please tell everybody where they can find you on TV and what is your Instagram.
Well, you can find me on CNN every goddamn hour of the day. I'm
Exactly.
bored with myself.
If you follow her on Instagram, you'll see when she's going to be on. She posts about it with a new outfit before she
I do,
gets on. And it's really
I do.
and it's really cute. I like it. I'm like, hey, I need those pants.
I know. And then on social media, I'm at SE Cupp, and I also have a nationally syndicated column they can find every week. But you don't have to look far. I am
You're,
obnoxiously in your
you're
face.
everywhere. Great. Everybody follow her if you want to learn a thing or two. SE Cupp, thank you so much for coming on. And I will see you in LA or New York whenever, whoever makes it there
We
first.
will. It will happen. I adore you, and thanks for having me.